Hey guys, Thomas is here, aka Mustache Tom, here to review the movie Avengers Endgame. And of course, this is going to be a spoiler review. It's going to be right there in the title. And I'm doing a spoiler review because every other big YouTuber is probably also going to do that when this is released. And I want to make sure that I'm in there. Even though I'm small and that no one's gonna probably yell at me for doing it, but they'll probably yell at those people, the big YouTubers, because they're big. I wish someone would yell at me and say, "You're an asshole." Just so I can say, well, it's in the title. It's gonna say spoilers right in the title, so you've been warned. Please watch movie first. Then you can watch this review. But you're probably going to end up watching some other person's review. Let's be honest. Let's be real. Anyways, again, this is going to be a spoiler review, and of course this leads off of the previous Avengers movie, whatever it was called. The one with the Thanos and the snapping of the fingers. So, this movie begins. We're going to recap. And I will say, as we're going through, I have a huge issue with this movie. A huge issue with this movie in particular, but that does happen near the end, and I will be telling this review in a more chronological order, so don't worry until later. Anyways, this movie actually starts out with Hawkeye. You know, the guy that wasn't in the previous movie at all. Well, he's back, and he's with his family. A big dynamic in this movie in particular, it would seem. And as he's living it up on his little farm, calling out to his family, he suddenly realizes that out of the blue, he's suddenly alone. So he's kind of just left there to his own devices. We then cut to Tony Stark, and I believe her name is Nebula, Gamora's sister, the blue robot chick. And they're putzing around playing like some little mini game of paper football. I don't remember how Iron Man got up into space. I forget what movie this happens in. If it was just the previous one, I don't know. Anyways, he does end up making a recording saying that if he doesn't make it, he's saying his goodbyes, and it's very foreboding, if you will. So he takes a nap, and then we see a glimpse of Captain Marvel. She has already arrived. And I will say in advance that I'm glad what they did with Captain Marvel here is exactly what they did with Captain Marvel here, but we'll get to that. So there are some good elements, and there is some major issues here, but hey, again, we'll get to that. Anyways, we cut to Captain America, who is joined by Rocket Raccoon, and Cap and Iron Man talk about I guess after Iron Man comes back from his little mission or whatever, they talk about their losses and stuff like that. And Tony gives up his core, and he kind of falls down for a bit. And we learn apparently that Thanos did his little snap on another planet, even though I don't know if that makes sense or not? Question mark? It seems like after he snapped the first part, the gauntlet did the damage, and then I thought the Infinity Stones moved after the first snap? Question mark. I think that is probably one of the biggest plot holes if I remember how the Infinity Stones work, or I could just be making that shit up. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't remember how the gauntlet works. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a massive plot hole that makes the entire movie work, or if it just he's allowed to do it another time. I don't know. Whatever. Pretty big problem, potentially, if that, again, I don't know how the snapping thing works exactly. And apparently, Miss Marvel was busy saving other planets from this destruction, which is apparently why she did not take the calls. The calls from what's this say? God damn, the guy who messaged her. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. Anyway, so yeah, she was busy saving other planets. I guess that's a fine explanation, I suppose. Anywho, we see that the glove is taken off and that the gems are gone at this point. After, I guess, a second snap, they are officially gone. I don't know how that works again. And Thor, him and three others, Iron Man, Cap, and one other person, I forgot who was the fourth. I should have wrote that down. I didn't. Sorry. But he goes in for the kill. Thor goes in for the kill, and yes, he does kill Thanos, apparently. So Thor killed Thanos. You probably are wondering, well, how does the rest of the movie happen? And don't worry, we'll get there, and this is where some good stuff happens and where some bad stuff starts to happen, but we're getting there. So 5 years pass, and Captain America is now with this like little regroup, one of those like safety groups of like, not like chain smokers of like, but instead it's like lost center, like talking about getting over it and moving on and doing that sort of stuff. So we cut to San Francisco where Ant-Man was, and he comes out of like his little small state on his own, and he starts to realize something has been done. So he goes to the grave site and he sees that his mentor has died. One of the people that were snapped away when we saw that. And thus he proceeds to find his daughter, who is now, of course, 5 years older from the last time we saw her. Meanwhile, Rocket and Widow are talking, and they're talking like in these little like hologram projector things, and I forget what her name is in this movie. Michonne from The Walking Dead. I forget what her name is, but in this movie, but she's there with them as well, and as well as War Machine. They're all like communicating via these little holograms, and War Machine, out of all of them, sticks around for a bit. And then Captain America arrives and talks to her about the potential bright side of things and what he's been up to with her. And thus Ant-Man makes contact with them, and he starts when he gets in there and he starts talking about this quantum realm and how they could potentially move back in time. So we cut to Tony Stark, who now has a daughter. I didn't catch her name, unfortunately. So I do apologize for that. But Cap obviously arrives to him because he probably would have an idea of like how to potentially go back. And we see that the Hulk has somehow learned to meld his two personalities together. That being the Raging Hulk and the being of the Bruce Banner are now melded, and the facial structure of the Hulk is now more of Bruce Banner, and he is able to talk in full sentences as Hulk. So Iron Man finds a picture of Spider-Man, one of the people who were dusted. So he puts his daughter to bed and then talks with Pepper about whether or not he wants to do what Ant-Man referred to as a time heist. Literally, that is what they call it, what he calls it anyway. So we start to get a little glimpse of this time travel as Ant-Man himself decides to volunteer for this time travel. And it's a little bit of a joke. He like comes back and he's like older and he's like younger and blah blah blah. Iron Man already kind of figured it out along the way, and Rocket Raccoon arrives with Nebula. I'm not sure how they met up, but whatever. War Machine arrives. Hulk and Raccoon go to Valkyrie, and she's all up in this other area where Thor and that other rock guy, I'm just going to call him Rock because I don't know what his name was. I think it's Rock, I don't know. And Thor has let himself go. He's become fat, he's been drinking, he's been just playing video games. Apparently he's literally playing Fortnite or something of the like. So he's kind of lost a lot of his luster along the way. So Rocket convinces Thor to come by offering some more beer. Meanwhile, we cut to Hawkeye, who's now somewhere in Asia? Question mark? I forget where it was, but he's fighting some Asian guy. And like takes him out because he's like trying to find people who like killed his family, and then Black Widow comes to like talk to him, say what happened. So we cut back to the team who's working on the time traveling, working on their new suits. So Hawkeye is the one who volunteers this time around. And he's led back to a time where his family was alive, and he manages to hear his daughter, so the time travel worked. So he was brought back before anything else happened. So, the team talks about when they need to go and how they need to go. So with the stones scattered throughout, they want to go into teams of 3, and this is where I think some of the non-issue happens. That's a weird statement, but so to sum it up, the characters are split up into areas where they would probably be most familiar. Like, just as a one example, Thor is sent to Asgard. Back in time, by the way, so from a standpoint of knowing the location, it makes sense, but the issue now comes with the emotional turmoil, which is great for character development, but it doesn't make sense for the team to make that decision, it almost feels like. And the one that makes sense the most is Hawkeye and, Black Widow, I feel. All the other ones, I feel, don't make sense as far as, like, why they would choose to go to what areas they went to. Like, again, Captain America and Iron Man, they go back to a point where Captain America has to literally fight himself, which, that would cause various issues, but I suppose in the context of Iron Man, past Cap thought he was like a Hydra agent or whatever. They kind of like passingly, seemingly put that through a joke or whatever. And like, Tony gets to meet his father because family is the theme of the movie. So yes, just to get it in order, we first head over to New York in 2012, where we see they just take clips from the previous Avengers movie. I think this is the first one, where Captain America, Iron Man, and Hulk all are. So Hulk goes to meet with the Grand Wizard, or whatever the official name is. Not Grand Wizard, but like Master Wizard or something like that. She's able to separate Banner's spirit from the Hulk, which like bodies him out or whatever. And he's trying to convince her to give him the Time Stone specifically. We could then cut to Asgard in 2013, where again we see that Thor was sent there with Rocket Raccoon, and Thor leaves to do his own little bit. I believe the third planet, it was called Morgak or something like that, in 2014, with Hawkeye, War Machine, and Black Widow and Nebula, the four of them. And we see that we cut to that time's Nebula, Gamora, and Thanos, as they are currently planning on getting the Infinity Stones. So, that Nebula gets, like, a message from the future one that they have arrived, because technology is able to pick up on your alter ego or whatever. So, among with Iron Man, as we cut back to him, he's with Ant-Man, who's like flicked into the case. And Captain America, as a fun joke, does the Hail Hydra as he was in that elevator with all these other guards, and that's what allowed him to like not get attacked or whatever. And if you don't know what I'm talking to, there was a comic book where Cap says Hail Hydra, and then a lot of people had issue with that comic idea. But now they're using it to say, like, haha, see? We can have him do it, and it's a joke. I'm pretty sure everyone will be fine with it now that it's in this movie. The irony of that all. Anyways, let's see. Iron Man is like in like this bodysuit or whatever. Meanwhile, past Thor, Tony Stark, and Loki are arguing, and they have the case which has the Tesseract, which is one of the has one of the Infinity Stones within it. I think that's how that works. So Loki sees that it is teleported or moved over to him, so he teleports with the cube, which I don't know how many issues that caused since they go back further in time, question mark. I think that like cancels out all of this stuff that just happens because this team like really fucks it up. As I mentioned, Cap fights himself, so I guess that technically doesn't ruin anything since they went back further in time. As they explain it, it's kind of hard to understand, but it does cause later issues down the line, trust me. Because time travel. Anyways, so future Cap, takes out the past Cap. Meanwhile, we cut back to Banner, who's again trying to convince the Grand Wizard to give him the Time Stone, and then they talk about how if the Time Stone or any of the stones is placed out of order, then that will create a divergence in the timeline. So there is that issue. And Banner includes to mention that, what's his face? Doctor Strange was given the Time Stone and what he did with it and why he allowed Thanos to win at that point in time. So Thanos, by the way, plugs in Nebula into all those little things and then scans what she can see and starts to see everything that is happening with their little team anyways. So we cut back to Thor, who's talking with his mom, which, again, I don't know if that ruins any timeline, but she says not to spoil her, so I guess it's fine if that happens. I don't know. She even knows that he is from a different time immediately. So Raccoon goes for the girl who has I forget who the girl is, but she has that stone with Thor. We cut to Quill, Star-Lord, quote unquote, who's doing his little dance routine at the beginning of his movie, and he is knocked out by War Machine. Let's see, let me go down my notes here. As I mentioned, he's knocked out by War Machine. And Nebula, in that version of Nebula, moves on ahead. But as War Machine time travels back, Nebula gets struck by a sudden pain, and she's stuck there now. So anyways, Captain America, Iron Man, and Ant-Man are starting to argue about how much they failed, and thus they proceed, or Captain America and Iron Man proceed to go further back in time, as I mentioned, to the 1970s, where we see a loving cameo by a young Stan Lee. So even beyond, he's still doing it. It's an amazing power. So Captain America and Iron Man split up, and as I mentioned, Iron Man gets to talk with his father, and Cap sees some vials. I'm not sure what these vials are or what they do. He just grabs them. So he hides out, and he sees a picture of himself, and then he sees his old girlfriend, and then he's like, oh. So, the two Nebulas fight each other, and the young one wins, and then Thanos gets his hand on one of those vials somehow, I don't know. So, I believe the next location is Vormir, or something along those lines, in 2014, where Hawkeye and Black Widow are going for the Soul Stone, and they see Red Skull doing his bit where he explains how one must sacrifice himself to reach the Soul Stone for a bit. Sorry about that, it lagged out on me. So the two chat about it for a bit, and they start to fight over who's gonna take themselves out for the greater good, and it ends up being Black Widow, so she ends up sacrificing herself so that Hawkeye can reach the Soul Stone. And and everyone manages to all come back at the same time. So, Cap, Iron Man, and Thor, and everyone else sees that Hawkeye's distraught by the decision he had to make, or not make in this case. And thus Iron Man proceeds to make his own Infinity Gauntlet. But they did not know that the bad Nebula was the one who ended up traveling with them instead. The base closes up, everyone shields up because of the potential radiation that they saw from Thanos earlier in the movie. So she opens up a gateway, this gateway to what is called the origin point. I'm not sure what that ends up doing. and I lagged again. Nonetheless, he manages to get the snap off, and Hawkeye checks his phone to see that his wife is, like, calling him, and that gets him all teary-eyed, and it's an emotional moment. But their base gets fired upon brutally, and Hawkeye looks to find that the Thanos demons are coming back to get the remaining gauntlets now. So he starts to run off and flee, and Thanos arrives with future Gamora and future Nebula, or past them, I should say. And Iron Man and Captain America also head out, and people are slowly getting out on their own. They approach with Thor, and three of them and one other person. I think it's not Hawkeye. It's like someone else. The three of them and someone else are fighting Thanos. And Hawkeye's continuing to flee with the gauntlet. There we go. So Gamora stops Nebula, and then the other Nebula, like, shoots her or whatever. So Captain America is able to grab and hold Mjolnir, the hammer. So I guess he's worthy, or always has been. I'm not sure if he tried to do that last time, ? I don't remember. I think he was about to, and then they cut it off or something, if I remember that scene correctly. Anyway, so Cap fights Thanos himself with Mjolnir, and a bunch of demons are set free, or whatever they are, like demon bug monster thingies. And as they're fighting in this, like, wasteland, these portals, these magical portals appear, and spoiler alert, this is where I'll start to say spoiler alert even more, Black Panther arrives, he is alive, and so do all of the superheroes. All of the warriors come. Literally all of the warriors. So this is a fun little moment where everyone starts fighting. Captain's still fighting Thanos primarily, as Black Panther arrives. And they hold up against Thanos. And again, it's just all the warriors against all of Thanos' demons, and it's an all-out attack. As Spider-Man reunites with Iron Man, and it's a touching hug of hugging proportion. We see Ant-Man and Wasp team up and do their little fly bit as they are trying to reach this time machine, or they're trying to reach something. I think it's a time machine, quote unquote. So they toss the gauntlet over to Black Panther, who starts to move more agile along the way as Thanos is trying to get to the gauntlet, and Scarlet Witch arrives on the scene, be like, nah, brah, I got power, and I'm gonna take you down temporarily. But Panther is getting overwhelmed, so he tosses it to Spider-Man, who comes in with his little Iron Man suit with the little 4 tendrils that are 4 or 6 tendrils. I believe it's 6. So they have this ship in the air, the demons do, and they are like firing upon the good guys. And so all of the magic people put up their little protector things up. And Captain Marvel arrives back on the scene, is able to destroy the ship in one fell swoop, because OP. And she is teamed up with all the women warriors. There are probably too many to name. Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, The Walking Dead, Michonne, all of her warriors on top of that. I'm trying to think of all the women that were in that particular scene. Valkyrie's there. And thankfully they don't say like something stupid like, let's show these men how we do it, like something really stupid like that. They just happen to all be there and do the goddamn job. Fucking that's how you do it. If you want to show equality, just have women kick ass. That's exactly how you do it. I'm so glad for that scene in particular, because even though it's just all the women that just happen to all end up being in one spot, they don't throw in a stupid line like, oh, let's show the men how we do it or something. They just kick ass. And that's how you show equality. It's that simple. Anyways, non-stupidity aside, Thanos is unfortunately still nearing the gauntlet, so Thor tries to attempt to stop him, but is unsuccessful. Thanos then is stopped by Captain Marvel, who gets in a good punch and almost gets the gauntlet, but she is like blasted away by because he takes out the Power Stone, I believe, and blasts her away. And I do think that this is actually a very smart decision as well, because Captain Marvel was just introduced, and having her be the one to save the day would have just seemed incredibly rushed for her character. So I'm really glad that they decided to have her be overpowered in this instance. So Iron Man had a little chat somewhere along the way with Doctor Strange about like how he had that one thing that's like, this is the one time it will work, and he's not allowed to tell Iron Man what that one thing is. But Thanos thinks he sees the Infinity Gauntlet, so he grabs it and he snaps, but nothing happens this time, as the gauntlet that he wields ends up dissipating into nothingness, as Iron Man takes the real gauntlet and he snaps, as he wittily just says, Thanos says, I'm inevitable. Iron Man casually goes, well, I'm Iron Man. So he snaps the demons away, and Thanos is among the last to leave, and he doesn't even say anything, he just sits there. He just sits there and leaves. Sorry again for the pause there, but it lagged again. So we see the aftermath of this as Hawkeye returns to his family, Peter Parker returns to his school with his one friend. We start to hear Iron Man's message from the beginning, the one that was sort of cut out a little bit, but we hear more of it, and how now that he sacrificed himself because the radiation did its number on him and then he died. Big spoiler there. So Ant-Man gets to return to his family as well, and everybody that was there pays their respects to Tony Stark. Meanwhile, Thor is talking with Valkyrie about potentially going back, and he says that he's going to stay. He ends up actually going back with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they have that bit of like, who's in control? Haha. So Captain America gets ready. He's the one who ends up getting ready to return the stones. So he does. And I have a huge issue with this decision. He ends up returning back, but he ends up returning back super old, which makes no sense. That would mean that the Captain America movies didn't happen. Because him going back, that would be his timeline. So the damage that was caused by Bucky would have happened. You see, that's a huge issue. This time travel thing has a huge issue at the end of the movie. Captain America's story makes no sense now. I really, really hate this decision, all because Captain America wanted to see his old flamey girlfriend. I really think that was a really bad mistake on the writer's part to include this, because it doesn't make any sense. It ruins Captain America's movies. And if it ruins his movies, that would mean all of that destruction would have probably done a lot more damage. It also means that Red Skull would be alive. Just so much is ruined by that one scene, and I don't know what they were thinking with that. They should have just had him come back normally. I don't know. Again, I don't know why they chose to do it that way. It's really, really bad. So he passes on his shield to, I believe his name is Falcon. And they have their little touching moment. And that is... yes, it leaves off with Captain America passing on the shield. And that is Avengers Endgame. And if there was an after-credit sequence, I didn't stick around to see what it was, because I don't know. So, for the most part, this movie is pretty damn solid. Except for the two massive... well, I suppose it's left to one massive issue. That being the Captain America thing. I definitely have a significant issue with that, because it definitely ruins his entire timeline. Yeah, and there's quite a bit of setup, obviously, to the time travel, and again, I did say, like, for the emotional motif, like, where the characters decided to go didn't really make sense for them, but it made sense for us, because it allowed for that character development to happen. So there were definitely some sacrifices made in terms of that. Yeah, dealing with time travel is always going to leave some issues to occur. So there may be other ramifications for going back in time, who knows? But as far as I'm concerned, again, the biggest one is definitely Captain America deciding to stay. I think that one's extremely crucial, considering that ruins all three of his movies. Unless there's something I am not thinking of, like, did someone just replace him? Did he, like, stay with his girlfriend but do all those battles but go back to his girlfriend afterwards? There is no decisive answer for that now. But that also means that he wasn't there for all the other battles, because I don't know, what was that decision? Why did they do that? It makes no sense. I don't know. I did enjoy this movie for the most part. It definitely has that massive issue for me. I think that's the biggest one. Out of all the time-traveling decisions, I think that one's the one that breaks a lot of other stuff. All the other ones are, like, they kind of skirt very close to, like, breaking their realities, like Thor almost did it. Yeah. Captain America fighting himself, I guess, technically didn't happen. Um, yeah, I don't know, like, since they went further back in time. Yeah, so the biggest one I have problem with is Captain America still. Getting there, again, the emotional weight I think is definitely warranted. And just to touch a little bit more on Captain Marvel, as I mentioned, I'm glad, as I mentioned, that she wasn't the one to stop Thanos. And I thought the decision they made with Iron Man is a perfect fit, because Iron Man has been around a lot longer. His character has developed so significantly, and you know, the beginning of the movie kind of shows you that his character arc was done already. So him passing that mantle to either Pepper or his daughter, you know, that is going to probably what ends up happening. And there's already a war machine, so yeah, I do think that was a very, very smart decision. On top of the fact that he's just, underneath that suit, he's just a man. A man beat Thanos. Like, that is so smart. That feels very, very smart. A very, very smart choice out of anyone they could have picked. It wasn't some overpowered character like Thor, like how they did in the beginning. They had Thor kill Thanos in the beginning. So he does have that victory on him, on his belt. So we can say that Thor did technically kill Thanos, so we know that he can now. You know, it wasn't an overpowered character like Thor, or like Captain Marvel is, or like Scarlet Witch is. You know, these very overpowered characters. Ends up being Iron Man. You know, again, without that suit, he is just a man. And I really appreciate that it's him. A character that was extraordinarily developed throughout his franchise. I feel like because of that, he has so much better treatment than Captain America, and his send-off makes a lot more sense than Captain America's does. Captain America's send-off makes 0 sense to me. So yeah. Iron Man wins! He dies, but he won. He's a better character than Captain America now. It's official. No one can argue it because this movie ruined Captain America, I feel. All of them. I don't know what to say to that. Oops! You done fucked up, Endgame. But it did have its enjoyable parts. Like, that battle at the end is so, overwhelmingly cool. There's just so much going on the screen. It's literally all the Warriors, and I do appreciate it's all the Warriors. And yeah, again, the time travel does lead to some of its bigger issues toward the end there. So as a score, I'm gonna give excuse me. I'm gonna give Avengers Endgame a 6 out of 10. Again, it would have been a 7. I feel a solid 7, or I think it could have even pushed all the way to an 8, even potentially. If they didn't fuck up Captain America, what the fuck were they thinking with that? That was so stupid. That was so brutally stupid. I don't know how you could fix that. So they fucked up one of their biggest heroes to me. You know, Captain America is one of the heroes that saved Marvel, especially in his second film. He definitely rose up to make superhero movies start to be good again. In a time previous to this movie, I felt like all the movies leading up to this have been superhero mediocre films, starting off with Spider-Man Into the Universe, a disappointing film. What's his face? Shazam, a movie that has a lack of, like, time in between certain characters doing certain things, and it felt kind of unfocused on the chicanery for far too long. You had Captain Marvel, her movie, which had its own issues of, like, sort of this confusion between, like, whose side is she on? What is this nonsense about emotion? It makes no sense in that regard. Her getting her powers, that's fine. You know, her relationship between the enemies and what they eventually want. What they did with those copy guys, whatever they're called, the Scree or whatever. Yeah. And how that sort of could have also potentially messed with the timeline a little bit. You know, you had 3 superhero movies that I felt were all pretty bad in different ways. And I'm really glad that Endgame, for the most part, is a pretty solid superhero movie. And again, the only thing I think they really royally fucked up was Captain America as a character. I really can't believe that they did that. I feel like that was a slap to the face, and I almost felt like I should have dropped it to a 5 out of 10 because of that one decision. It is that bad. It is crucially bad, but I think that is a bit unfair to lean it all on one character. And again, besides that one decision, it's really, really cool. So again, I'm going to stick with a 6 out of 10. That was my review of Avengers. Let me close that. Let me close the notes. Let me see if that helps. Anyways, that was my review of Avengers Endgame, with spoilers sprinkled throughout. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed at this point. And then until next time, everyone, bye-bye.